My name is Evelyn Hayes. I'm 29 years old, and 2 years ago my husband sat across from me inside our luxury Manhattan penthouse and calmly explained why I no longer belonged in the future he wanted. The crazy part? I was the woman who helped build that future from absolutely nothing. I met Adrian Cole when we were both broke and exhausted trying to survive New York City. Back then, Adrian wasn't powerful. He was ambitious, the kind of man who treated success like oxygen. We worked together at a tiny consulting company that barely paid enough to survive. Long nights, cheap takeout, shared subway rides home at midnight. Most people quit after a few months. Adrian stayed because he was terrified of being ordinary forever. And honestly, that's what made me fall in love with him. We built our relationship during struggle, not luxury. There's something dangerous about struggling together when you're young because it tricks you into believing loyalty will last forever. Some nights we sat on the fire escape outside my apartment eating instant noodles while Adrian talked endlessly about the future. One day we're gonna own this city. I used to laugh and kiss him, because back then, he still looked at me like I was part of his dream instead of an obstacle to it. Years passed, and slowly Adrian started winning. First promotions, then better companies. Then Blackwell Capital recruited him. That changed everything. Blackwell wasn't just rich, it was elite. The type of finance company where billionaires casually controlled industries over private dinners. The day Adrian got hired there, he cried in my arms, "Evelyn, this changes our lives." And it did, just not the way I expected. Money arrived fast. Luxury apartment, designer clothes, private parties. At first it felt exciting, like all our sacrifices finally meant something. But success changed Adrian slowly, then completely. He became obsessed with status. Obsessed with powerful people, obsessed with entering rooms filled with old money billionaires, and eventually, he stopped looking at me the same way. Then Celeste Laurent entered our lives. Beautiful, elegant, billionaire daughter, the kind of woman who looked expensive without even trying. I met her at one of Adrian's corporate events, and the entire night, I watched my husband look at her with something terrifying in his eyes. Not love, ambition, and honestly, that scared me more than cheating ever could. After meeting Celeste Laurent, something inside Adrian started changing faster. At first he tried hiding it. But when you love someone deeply, you notice even the smallest emotional shifts. The way they stop listening fully. The way conversations become shorter, the way their eyes no longer soften when they look at you. That's exactly what happened to Adrian. Before Celeste, Adrian used to tell me everything, every meeting, every fear, every dream. After Celeste, his phone suddenly stayed face down. Late-night business dinners became normal, and whenever I asked if something was wrong, he'd sigh tiredly and say, "You're overthinking again." Funny how people call you insecure while secretly betraying you. One night, Adrian invited me to a massive Blackwell Capital charity gala. Luxury hotel, champagne towers, celebrities everywhere. Women wore diamonds brighter than cameras. Men talked about billion-dollar deals casually while servers walked around carrying champagne that probably cost more than my first apartment rent. I spent hours getting ready because part of me still believed maybe we were just going through a rough phase. Maybe the man I loved was still somewhere underneath all the ambition. But the second we entered that ballroom, I realized something horrifying. I no longer belonged in Adrian's world anymore. He barely stayed beside me all evening. Powerful investors kept pulling him away, and every single time I looked across the room, he was standing beside Celeste Laurent, laughing, smiling, looking more alive than he had with me in months. At one point, I watched her adjust his tie gently while whispering something into his ear. Such a small gesture, but it shattered me instantly, because intimate body language always reveals the truth before words do. Later that night, I went upstairs to the balcony because suddenly I couldn't breathe properly. Cold New York wind hit my face while the city lights glittered below me. And for the first time in years, I felt completely alone beside my own husband. Then I heard voices behind me, Adrian's voice, and Celeste's. I froze immediately, not intentionally. My body just stopped moving. Then Celeste laughed softly and asked, "What about your wife?" Silence. Long, painful silence. Then Adrian answered quietly, "Evelyn doesn't understand this level of life." I swear my chest physically hurt hearing that. Because years earlier, this man couldn't even afford subway fare sometimes. And now suddenly I wasn't sophisticated enough for his level. But the next sentence destroyed me completely. Adrian sighed softly and said, "I've outgrown the version of myself that needed her." Needed her, past tense, like I was just some temporary stage in his evolution. Tears filled my eyes instantly, but I stayed completely silent. Because in that moment, something inside me broke permanently. That night, we returned home around 1 a.m. The second Adrian walked inside the penthouse, I asked quietly, "Are you in love with her?" He froze immediately, which was answer enough. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then finally, Adrian loosened his tie slowly and whispered, "It's complicated." I laughed softly. Broken people laugh at strange moments sometimes, because after 7 years together, my marriage had apparently become complicated. I looked directly at him. "You want a divorce?" Adrian closed his eyes briefly, then said the sentence that changed my life forever. "Celeste opens doors that you never could." I felt numb instantly, not angry, not screaming, just numb. Because suddenly I understood the truth. My husband didn't leave me because I was unlovable. He left because ambition convinced him powerful people mattered more than loyal ones. And honestly, that realization hurt worse than cheating itself. After that night, everything happened fast, too fast. 3 days later, Adrian officially filed for divorce. 3 days after 7 years together. That's how I knew he had emotionally left long before I discovered the truth. The divorce process felt cold, not emotional, not messy, just cold. Lawyers, documents, signatures. As if our entire marriage had simply become another business deal Adrian wanted finished quickly. And honestly, that hurt more than screaming ever could. Because the man who once held me during panic attacks now looked at me like I was just part of his old life he needed removed before moving forward. Within months, Adrian and Celeste Laurent became New York's newest power couple. Everywhere I looked, there they were. Magazine articles, luxury vacations, corporate events. People online called them perfect together. One headline literally said, "Finance star Adrian Cole and billionaire heiress Celeste Laurent become Manhattan's most powerful couple." I stared at that article for almost 10 minutes before finally closing my phone and crying in my kitchen alone. Not because I still wanted him, because I suddenly felt replaceable. Like the years I spent loving him meant absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, my own life completely collapsed. I moved out of the penthouse into a tiny apartment downtown. No city skyline, no luxury furniture, no giant windows, just silence. Painful silence. For weeks, I barely slept properly. Every little thing reminded me of Adrian. Coffee shops, songs, even stupid things like seeing expensive black suits in store windows. The hardest part about heartbreak isn't always losing the person. Sometimes it's losing the future you imagined with them. One night I sat alone on my apartment floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes, and finally whispered out loud, "How did I become this small?" Because somewhere during Adrian's rise, I stopped building myself completely. Everything became about supporting his dreams, his career, his future, his ambitions. And suddenly I realized something terrifying. If I didn't rebuild my own life now, I would spend the rest of my life emotionally trapped inside his shadow. That realization changed everything. So instead of destroying myself, I got angry. And anger became motivation. I started my own consulting company using the same skills I secretly spent years helping Adrian improve behind the scenes. Brand strategy, corporate communication, investor image rebuilding. Turns out, I was far more talented than I ever allowed myself to believe. And slowly, my company started growing, then exploding. Within a year, I had major international clients and more money than I'd ever imagined making on my own. For the first time in my life, people respected me for me. Not as Adrian Cole's wife. Not as someone standing behind a successful man. Just Evelyn Hayes. And honestly, that confidence changed me more than heartbreak ever did. Meanwhile, Adrian's perfect world started collapsing quietly behind the scenes. Apparently, Victor Laurent Celeste's billionaire father never truly respected Adrian. He only used him. And once Adrian became too ambitious and too independent, Victor decided to destroy him professionally. A massive financial scandal suddenly blamed Adrian for leaked company documents. His reputation collapsed almost overnight. The same elite world he sacrificed our marriage for abandoned him instantly, because powerful people only love you while you're useful. Then one rainy night at almost 2 a.m., someone knocked on my apartment door. When I opened it, my heart stopped for a second. It was Adrian, but not the Adrian I remembered. This version looked exhausted, broken. No confidence, no expensive smile, no arrogance. Just regret, real regret. And quietly, he looked at me and whispered, "I ruined my entire life." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Adrian finally admitted the truth. "I thought power would make me happier." He laughed weakly, then looked down at the floor. "But losing you destroyed me more than losing money ever could." That sentence hit me hard. Because years earlier, I would have done anything to hear him say something like that. But heartbreak changes people, and by the time someone finally realizes your value, sometimes you've already learned how to live without them. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Adrian just stood there outside my apartment door looking like a completely different person from the man who left me. And honestly, that scared me more than seeing him confident ever did. Because powerful men only look that broken after losing something they can't replace. Finally, I stepped aside quietly. "Come in." Adrian walked inside slowly, like he wasn't even sure he deserved to be there. The second he entered my apartment, I noticed how different we had become. A year ago, I was the broken one. Now, I owned a successful company. I looked confident again, peaceful even. Meanwhile, Adrian looked exhausted enough to collapse. Funny how life works sometimes. He sat down at my kitchen counter silently while rain hit the windows outside. For several minutes, he just stared at the floor. Then finally he whispered, "Victor Laurent set me up." Victor Laurent, Celeste's billionaire father, the same man Adrian spent years trying to impress. I crossed my arms carefully. "What happened?" Adrian laughed bitterly. Not amused, broken. Apparently confidential Blackwell Capital documents leaked publicly 2 weeks earlier. Massive financial information. illegal internal deals, private investor communications, secret acquisition plans, enough to destroy careers instantly. And somehow, all evidence pointed directly toward Adrian. Emails, access logs, authorization records. Perfect evidence. Too perfect. At first I thought it was a mistake, Adrian admitted quietly. Then I realized someone built the entire thing to look like me. I stayed silent. Because honestly, part of me almost believed this was karma. The man who destroyed our marriage for power was finally watching power destroy him too. But another part of me, the part that once loved him deeply, could still hear genuine fear in his voice. Then Adrian looked at me carefully and whispered, "Celeste left me." That surprised me less than it should have. Relationships built on status usually collapse the second status disappears. Apparently, once the scandal exploded publicly, Victor Laurent forced Celeste to separate from Adrian immediately to protect the family image. Cold, efficient, brutal. Exactly how billionaire families survive. Adrian rubbed his face tiredly. I lost everything in less than a month. And strangely, he sounded less devastated about money than identity. Because men like Adrian build their self-worth around power. Without success, they don't even know who they are anymore. Then he looked directly at me. And for the first time since our divorce, I saw genuine regret in his eyes. Not regret for consequences, regret for me. Evelyn, I need you to know something. I stayed quiet. Adrian swallowed hard before continuing. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. God, hearing that hurt more than I expected. Because years earlier, I would have sacrificed anything to hear those words, but heartbreak changes timing permanently. I looked at him carefully. Why are you really here, Adrian? Long silence. Then finally he admitted the truth. Because you're the only person who ever loved me without wanting something from me. That sentence shattered something inside me all over again. Because deep down, I knew it was true. The elite world Adrian chased never actually cared about him. They cared about what he could provide. And once he stopped being useful, they destroyed him without hesitation. Then Adrian suddenly pulled a folder from his bag and placed it on my kitchen counter. What's this? I asked carefully. His expression darkened. Proof Victor Laurent has been manipulating people for years. I frowned immediately. Inside the folder were financial records, private emails, and internal Blackwell documents connecting Victor Laurent to illegal market manipulation, massive corruption, enough to destroy billionaire reputations forever. My pulse quickened instantly. Adrian, this is dangerous. He nodded slowly. That's why I came to you. I stared at him in disbelief. You trust me with this after everything? Adrian laughed weakly. You're the only person I trust at all anymore. For a second, neither of us spoke. Rain kept hitting the windows softly while Manhattan lights glowed outside. Then quietly Adrian whispered, I spent years trying to become powerful enough for their world. His eyes finally met mine. And I destroyed the only real thing I had trying to get there. The pain in his voice sounded genuine. And honestly, that was the saddest part of all. Because finally, after losing everything, Adrian Cole understood what love actually was. Too late. After Adrian handed me the folder, the apartment became completely silent. Rain kept hitting the windows softly, while Manhattan glowed outside like nothing in the world was wrong. But inside my apartment, everything had changed. Because sitting on my kitchen counter was enough evidence to destroy one of the most powerful billionaire families in New York, And somehow, my ex-husband trusted me with it. I slowly looked through the documents again. Secret transactions, fake shell companies, illegal market manipulation. Victor Laurent wasn't just corrupt, he was dangerous. The kind of man who ruined lives quietly while smiling in public. Then I looked up at Adrian. "Why didn't you go to the police?" Adrian laughed weakly. "Men like Victor don't lose because of police." Honestly, that terrified me because I knew he was right. People with that level of power don't survive by being careless. They survive because they know how to bury problems before the world notices them. Then Adrian suddenly looked around my apartment slowly. At my company awards, my office desk, the life I rebuilt without him. And for a second, his expression completely broke. "You really did all this without me?" There was no jealousy in his voice, just sadness. Real sadness. I crossed my arms carefully. "You didn't think I could?" Adrian looked down immediately and quietly admitted, "No. I think deep down I believed you'd always stay waiting for me." That honesty hurt, because once upon a time, he would have been right. Adrian stood up slowly and walked toward the giant windows overlooking the city. For several seconds he just stared outside silently. Then finally he whispered, "Do you know what the worst part is?" I didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the skyline. I spent years trying to impress people who never cared if I survived. The sadness in his voice felt heavy, because ambition had finally stopped blinding him. Too late. Then his phone suddenly started ringing again. Unknown number. Adrian stared at it for a second before answering. Silence filled the room. I watched his face slowly lose color while someone spoke on the other end. Then finally Adrian whispered, "How did you get this number?" My stomach tightened instantly. A few seconds later, the call ended. "What happened?" I asked. Adrian looked at me carefully and quietly replied, "Victor knows I'm here." Every nerve in my body tightened instantly. "What?" Adrian walked toward me quickly. "Evelyn, listen to me carefully." His voice sounded urgent now, serious. "If anything happens, release those documents publicly immediately." Fear crawled down my spine, because suddenly this no longer felt like corporate drama. It felt dangerous. Real dangerous. Then Adrian looked at me differently than he had in years. Not with arrogance, not with pity, not with superiority. Just love. Pure, honest love. The kind that arrives too late to save anything. And softly, he finally said the words I once dreamed about hearing. "I never stopped loving you, Evelyn." God, that sentence nearly destroyed me. Because part of me still loved him too. Maybe I always would in some painful, unfinished way. But love and trust are not the same thing, and Adrian shattered my trust long ago. Tears filled Adrian's eyes slowly. "I would give everything to undo what I did to you." I believed him. That was the tragic part. I genuinely believed he meant every word. But heartbreak changes people permanently. And by the time someone realizes your value, sometimes you've already learned how to survive without them. I stepped closer slowly and looked directly into his eyes, and quietly said, "I forgive you, Adrian." He closed his eyes immediately like the words physically hurt him, but before he could speak again, I continued softly, "But I will never belong to you again." Silence. Painful silence. Then Adrian nodded slowly, like deep down, he already knew. A few minutes later, he walked toward the apartment door, but before leaving, he turned back one final time. And I swear the regret in his eyes could have drowned entire oceans. Because finally, after losing his marriage, his career, his status, and the elite world he sacrificed everything for, Adrian Cole understood the truth. The woman he once thought wasn't good enough for his world was the only person who ever truly loved him, and he destroyed that love with his own hands. That night, I watched Adrian disappear into the rain outside my building, and strangely, I didn't feel anger anymore, just peace. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destroying someone, it's surviving them, becoming stronger without them, and watching them realize your value only after it's far too late.